There's a joke that gets played on every new sailor. You send him looking for the batteries. The sound powered telephone on a submarine looks like a phone. It hangs on the bulkhead. It has a handset. It has a cord. So when the new guy comes aboard, someone inevitably tells him the phone back aft needs a fresh set of batteries ASAP. He does not find them. He goes forward and then he goes aft. He asks the chief. He asks supply. Somebody sends him one more compartment down the line, and then one more after that, with a straight face, because the whole boat is in on it. The whole boat already knows the thing he is about to learn. There are no batteries. There's no place to put them. There's nothing to charge and nothing to plug in. The phone runs on nothing but the sound of your own voice. You speak into it, and your voice is the power. That is the entire trick. That is why it is still bolted to every submarine in the fleet when 100 fancier things have come and gone. I've been thinking about that joke lately and why it is funny. It's funny because the new guy is doing exactly what I do. He's looking for the battery. He is hunting the whole ship for the external thing that will carry the signal, the power source that must live somewhere outside of him. And it was never out there. It was in him the entire time. He only had to speak. This is an episode about listening. It's about a phone with no batteries and a study that came out last year and a conversation I had a while back that reminds me. Additionally, it's about one man I served with and a question I never asked him. Let me start with the phone. Here is how a sound-powered phone telephone actually works, because the physics is the whole sermon. When you talk into the mouthpiece, your voice moves a thin metal diaphragm. That diaphragm nudges a small iron piece back and forth inside a coil of wire, and that coil sits against a magnet. Voice becomes motion. Motion becomes a current. The current runs down the wire to the earpiece on the other end, where it turns back into sound. No battery, no amplifier. Your loudest talking generates somewhere around 50 thousandths of a volt. That is all. And it's enough to carry your voice through a steel ship the length of a football field. Imagine that number for a second. 50 thousandths of a volt. The most important message on the boat rides on almost nothing. It rides on the small amount of energy I'm willing to spend by opening my mouth and meaning it. Because there is no amplifier, there is a rule for using one of these phones. And the rule is printed right there in the instructions. Speak slowly and clearly. You cannot mumble on a sound-powered phone. There's nothing to boost you and nothing to clean up a lazy signal. If the message matters, you have to give it your breath and your attention, or it does not arrive whole. The machine will not do the carrying for you. It only carries exactly what you're willing to put into it. And there's one more thing you have to do before any of that. You have to make the growl. The handset has a little hand crank on the side. You turn a dial to pick the station you want, and then you turn that crank, and a buzzer sounds at the far end. It's an ugly noise. Sailors will tell you it sounds like a chipmunk being strangled. That noise is the reason these phones are called growlers. As I reflect on those many years ago, one thing that resonates is that the crank does not power your voice. It never did. The talking is free. All the crank does is make the growl that tells the other station to pick up the handset. So the line itself needs no power. The connection is free. The only effort the machine asks of me, the only thing I have to physically work for, is the announcement. I have to be willing to make the sound that says, I'm here and I'm calling you. That is the whole cost of admission, not the message. The willingness to signal that a message is coming. There's a second variation of these phones, worn instead of held. It's called a can phone or a talker phone. The mouthpiece is a little rubber can of sorts with a push-to-talk button that hangs on a breastplate around your neck, and the headphones cover your ears. A lookout wears one, a watchstander wears one. Her hands are free, and the circuit stays open the entire time, because her whole job is to stay on the line, to receive, and to pass it on. Which brings me to the part of all of this that I did not fully understand when I was a young man standing watch. I always thought communication was the talking. The definition is incomplete. On the boat, you did not just hear an order, you said it back. Someone passes a command over the circuit, and you repeat it back, word for word, into the can. Then and only then does the man on the other end know that his message landed the way he sent it. If anything is incorrect, the sender, with utmost clarity, shouts, "Wrong," and repeats the original communication, and waits for the correct repeat back. This continues until the sent message is the received message. An incorrectly relayed message can have catastrophic ramifications. The loop is not closed when he stops speaking. The loop is closed when I say it back correctly. I did that 1,000 times and never once thought about what it was. It was procedure. It was just how you talked on the phone. It took me years and a couple of conversations I'll get to understand that the repeat back is the oldest and plainest form of the thing I say I want and so rarely give. It is proof of listening. Not the feeling of listening, the proof. The message comes back out of the receiver's mouth and changed into his own breath, and now the sender knows he was heard. Listening is not a thing that happens silently inside your skull where no one can check on it. On a submarine, listening is not real until the listener makes a sound back, until the receiving turns into something the other person can hear. So hold on to that, because a group of researchers found that very same thing, and they were nowhere near a submarine. Last year, a team led by a researcher named West published a study in a journal called Communication Psychology. They did something simple and a little bit brave. They put strangers together in conversation, hundreds of them, more than 600 people all told, and instead of asking everyone afterward how connected they felt, they watched. They coded the actual behaviors: eye contact, the angle of the body, the small verbal signals people give, and follow-up questions. When they looked at which of those behaviors actually tracked with two strangers walking away feeling closer than when they sat down, the follow-up question won across the board. Whether the two people were having a deep and searching conversation or just making small talk, the single most reliable sign that real listening was happening was that one person asked the other a follow-up question. Not a sharper opinion, not a clever thing to say, a question that could only exist because you had actually taken in the answer that came before it. Think about what a follow-up question really is. It is a repeat back. It's the receiver making a sound that proves the message landed. You cannot fake it. You cannot ask a true follow-up question about something you did not hear. The question is the evidence. It is the voice coming back down the wire, changed into your own breath, telling the other person that you were there for what they said. The Navy wired that truth into a handset back in the 1940s. West and his colleagues measured it in a study in 2025. Same findings, 80 years apart. The listener has to make a sound back, or the listening does not happen. A while back, I got to sit down with Dr. Haru Yamada, who has spent her life studying how people talk to one another across cultures, and she gave me the version of this that I have carried since. She told me that in Japanese, the character for listening is built out of an ear and 14 hearts. Listening as an act of the whole self, not just the one organ on the side of your head. And then she pointed out something I've held on to. In Japanese, the idea of asking and the idea of listening are bound up together, carried in the same character. To question and to listen are not two separate acts, they are one motion. She drew a line for me that I use almost every day now. She describes two kinds of listening. There is the listening where you are mostly checking the other person, weighing them, deciding whether they are credible, working out whether to believe what they are telling you. Call that the hard, critical listening. And then there is the soft listening, where you are simply trying to receive the person, to catch what they mean, and even what they cannot quite say. She thinks we have trained ourselves to be very good at the first kind, and that we are starving for the second. She had an image for it too, a flashlight and a lantern. A flashlight throws a hard, narrow beam. It only shows you the one thing you already decided to point it at, and everything around that stays dark. That is the listening for. Listening for the fact you wanted, the answer you expected, the opening for the thing you are already going to say. A lantern is different. You set it down and it fills the whole room with a softer hue, and it shows you things you did not know to look for. That is the listening she is talking about. Not the beam, but the glow. And she said one more thing near the end that is the reason this whole episode exists. She said that people avoid really listening because if you truly invest in it, it changes you. You cannot receive another person all the way and remain exactly who you are. So we keep it shallow on purpose. We hold the light as a narrow beam so nothing can get in and arrange us. I heard that, and I knew I was one of the people she meant. I thought about a phone with no batteries, and I thought about a man named Wortman. Communication on a submarine is not one line. It's an entire nervous system. There are separate circuits for everything, each one labeled. Each one has its own dedicated path of listening. One circuit for the captain, one for the lookouts, one for sonar, which is the whole boat listening to the whole ocean, one for damage control for the worst day you can imagine. Different listening for different needs, all of it humming through the hull at the same time. And there are backup circuits, wired on purpose through different parts of the ship so that if a single hit takes out one path, another one still gets through. Even the machine knows that connection needs more than one road home. Somebody has to run all of that. On my boat, that man was the communications officer. His name was Wortman. I'm going to keep him mostly to myself here out of respect and out of care, but I want you to know a few true things about him. He was, in a way I could feel even as a young man, the odd man out. The wardroom is a small world with its own kind of weather, and he did not quite move with it. He was a little apart. I do not think he was ever fully at home among the other officers, and I think he knew it, the way a person always knows it. All these years later, I remember how he spent that outsider status, standing up for us. Let me tell you what his job actually meant on a hard day. A submarine spends most of its life deep, where it can hear everything and say nothing. To get its message traffic waiting for us from the world above, the boat has to come up shallow, up to periscope depth, and put an antenna up out of the water and reach for a satellite. And that reach does not always work. The sea is moving over your head, the window is narrow, the download is hit and miss in ways that are nobody's fault and everybody's problem. You come up and you try to catch what you can, and sometimes you slide back down into the deep without all the traffic you were supposed to have. When that happened, there was a chain of command that wanted to know why. And Wortman would stand in front of it and defend us. He would explain that the Radio Shack had done their jobs, that the physics was against us that day, that the failure was not a failure of the crew. He put his own body between the people above him and the people beside me, and he took the weight so that we would not have to carry it. He fought for us, not once, but over and over. That is why he mattered to me, not because he was warm or easy or one of the popular ones, because when it counted, the odd man out was the one who stood in the gap. The man who did not quite belong spent whatever belonging he had protecting the rest of us. I was young. I witnessed the sacrifice. I received all of that. I felt it at the time, and I have felt it every year since. And I never once turned and asked him the question that was sitting right there the whole time at 50 thousandths of a volt, waiting for me to speak it. I never asked him what it cost. I never asked him what it was like to be the one apart. I never asked whether it wore on him standing there between us and the chain of command, defending men who I am not sure ever told him what it meant to them. I never asked him if he was all right. I never asked him a single follow-up question about the one thing I could plainly see, which was that this man was carrying something, and carrying it on our behalf. I want to be honest about why, because this is the whole point of the episode. I did not ask because asking would have exposed me. To ask him what it cost would have meant admitting how much I saw, how much I cared, and in that world, you did not show either one out loud. There is a hierarchy. There is a way you are supposed to hold yourself, and carrying it out in the open was not part of the uniform. The question was right there in my mouth. All I had to do was crank the growl and speak it slowly and clearly, and I let it go. I chose the silence because the silence was safe and the question was not. The circuit was live the entire time. It is always live. That is the thing about a sound-powered phone, and it's the thing about people too. The line does not need a battery. The connection is already there, humming, waiting. The only thing it ever needed was for me to make the growl, to make the ugly little sound that says, I'm calling you. I see you. Tell me. I never cranked it. I do not recall which of us left the boat first. That is how these things go. One day the watch bill changes, and then the years start stacking up, and the moment when I could have simply turned and asked is somewhere behind me, and I never noticed it closing. Rarely do I understand a last occurrence in the moment. I've looked for him since. I have done the searches more than once. I asked around at a reunion not long ago, and the man I asked did not know where he had gone either. The communications officer, the one whose entire job was making sure the signal got through, and I cannot find the station he's at now. The loop never closed. He passed me something across all those days in the plain way he stood up for us, and I never said it back. He may have gone the rest of his life not knowing it landed. So this is an episode about listening. Listening is not the quiet part. Listening is not sitting still with a good expression on your face while another person talks. The old sailors had it right, and they built it into the hardware. Listening is not real until the listener makes a sound back, the repeat back, the follow-up question, the voice that comes down the wire changed into your own breath so that the other person knows for certain that they were heard. And the follow-up question that matters most is almost always the one that would expose me, the one I would have to spend myself to ask. That is not a coincidence. The questions that prove I was truly listening are the same questions that reveal how much I saw and how much I care, which makes them exactly the ones I'm tempted to swallow. I did not want to be exposed, so I let the most important follow-up question go unasked. There is a whole other conversation living inside that sentence. It is about the kind of courage it takes to ask the question that leaves you standing there uncovered. with nothing boosting your signal and nowhere to hide. I'm going to leave that door shut for now. I only want to point at it and tell you it is there and tell you that I'm going to come back to it another time. For now, I'll leave you at the phone. The circuit is always live. The energy it runs on is your own, and it is a smaller amount than you fear. The connection is already there. The only thing it has ever asked of you is that you be willing to crank the growl, make the sound, and speak the true thing slowly and clearly before the comms window closes and the boat slips back down into the deep. So here's my question for you, and I'm asking it bluntly because I blew it when it was my turn. Who is the station you have never called? Who is the person you owe a follow-up question? The one you have been carrying for years, the one you could reach right now if you are only willing to be seen wanting to reach them. The line to them is live. It's been live this whole time. Go crank the growl.